You're watching Mutapa TV. My name is Ronald Mupara. In the studio, we've got Mkoma Joseph Chitambo. And Mkoma Joseph, we want to welcome you back.
Thanks very much for having me back.
Next time we're going to be here, you know, it's your show. Well, what have you decided to call the show?
So we've got very interesting things coming up. We've got a show coming up called Talking Politics with Joseph Chitambo. And this will be a weekly program where we talk about political events around the world. We'll be talking about the political situation in Zimbabwe. We're talking about the political climate here in Australia, in America, in the United Kingdom, everywhere. We'll be talking about anything at all that is politics.
To tell you, I will tell you the truth. I think people are actually waiting to hear from you, rather than me just wobbling around.
No, that's not wobbling. I mean, look, I mean, yeah, politics is very exciting. I mean, we live politics, and politics is in us. I mean, if we don't talk about it, who is going to do that? I mean, so it's we're really looking forward to that, and we welcome suggestions from people, from our viewers. Welcome any ideas at all, any suggestions to improve the show.
Yes.
So we'll be looking forward to your feedback.
And I heard you talking, you said sometimes you'll be bringing guest members here so that you can discuss about a certain issue or something like that.
Yes, I mean, throughout the show, obviously, we'll be looking at experts in certain areas. We've got a large pool of experts in several areas, you know, in politics, social issues, legal issues. And if anybody out there knows anyone who can, you know, provide some
panel,
they can make those suggestions, and they can either contact me or Ron, and then we will make sure that we invite those people so that they can, you know, make a contribution and let us know.
Beautiful. Let's just start this program. Let's just slice it where it's supposed to be sliced. Man, the newly reinstated Zimbabwean cabinet. What's your take on that? I heard people complaining. What were they complaining about?
Well, there are several issues that people have complained about. But to start with, people were expecting, you know, a different faces in the cabinet, not the same people that we've heard in cabinet for many years. I mean,
so nothing was really changed.
Well, if you look at the cabinet, the only change that has been that was there is that we have some military guys in the cabinet, and I'm not sure whether that is something that many people in Zimbabwe were expecting, or whether that was, you know, something that was welcomed by many people in Zimbabwe. People were expecting, you know, some fresh faces in the cabinet, new people with new ideas, but what we saw there is a recycling of the same people that we have heard under Robert Mugabe. And, you know, one wonders what, you know, contribution these people have got to make in terms of moving Zimbabwe forward. You have people like Kembo Mohadi, for example. He's been, you know, in cabinet for as long as I can remember.
They have shuffled and changed portfolios for
They've
him,
changed portfolios.
given him new portfolios, this one. And so is that what happened?
That is correct. Well, he is now in defense, right? Previously, he was in Home Affairs. And I cannot point to one thing, and I'm not sure that many, you know, people in Zimbabwe will point to one thing that Kembo Mohadi has done.
And Chinamasa is back into finance?
Chinamasa is back in finance, yes. We talked about Chinamasa a few weeks ago when he was, I think he had just been reassigned to the Ministry of WhatsApp, as people in Zimbabwe call it.
I was exactly going to say, I was waiting for you to finish.
Yes.
And I'll just say the Minister of WhatsApp and Facebook.
Yes, and I think the view at that time was that he had failed dismally in finance.
Okay.
And he admitted as much during an interview with Ruveneko Parenyatwa.
Okay, yes.
In that interview, he was basically blaming everybody else for the problems in Zimbabwe. Everybody else besides himself. He blamed your mom, my mom, your grandmother, my grandmother, and he never took responsibility at all. And this is the man that has been picked to, resume duties in finance. And one wonders what new ideas he's got that will take the country forward.
So with this cabinet, what was the expectations from people? Were people expecting people from the opposition or just young people, even if they're from ZANU-PF, just young people?
I think people were generally expecting fresh ideas, whether they were from the MDC or from ZANU-PF. I believe, from both sides of the political divide. There are people who are suitably qualified and people who have got the expertise, whether they are in Zimbabwe or whether they are in the diaspora. There are people with excellent, experience, excellent views about, moving our country forward.
Yeah.
As I said,
economically,
yes.
So what about the so-called the Ace Lumumba who said no one else is really qualified? Those people who are in the cabinet, if you take a look at their credentials, they're actually more qualified for the jobs they were given.
Well, maybe Ace Lumumba should have told us what credentials he was talking about. Because as I said, I mean, you tell me what credentials, Stembisonyoni has, for example. She's, I believe she's in her 70s or nearly in her 70s. And she's just been appointed Minister for Youth Affairs.
Youth Affairs, yeah, I heard.
It just beggars belief. She's been in cabinet all that long. And I think she has held different cabinet portfolios. And I cannot point to anything, and I invite many people out there, if they don't agree with me, to point out to anything at all that she has achieved while she was in cabinet to justify her being selected to cabinet this time around.
So probably, Mkoma Jose, this is a sad situation in Zimbabwe, but some people will just say, let's just wait and see what's going on.
Well, the problem with waiting and see,
we have waited
for too long.
Yeah.
And the problem with waiting is that mistakes happen while you're waiting. And then what next?
Yes.
And then we start, blaming ourselves and looking back and say, oh, we should have pointed this out when it was happening. The time to point about is now. We can't wait for mistakes to happen.
And this question,
and then we start talking.
And this question I've always been asking you, Mkoma Jose, and I think you think I'm on a repeat. Do you think 2018 elections are going to go on still?
Well, the president has said, let me say the president, head of state, and government, and commander-in-chief of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces.
Yes.
Well, that's the way to do it in Zimbabwe, isn't it? Well, the president has said elections are going ahead as scheduled in 2018, and I have no reason to believe that they are not happening. Well, I think that he obviously ZANU-PF at the moment, they've got the momentum going on, and there must be a renewed belief within the ranks of ZANU-PF that they might actually win this election in 2018. That is why I believe that the president will ensure that elections go ahead. Because they've got the momentum and they've got the military behind them as well.
Yes, for sure. And another question that will seem as if I'm on repeat button. Do you think, say, if the opposition party wins, the military is going to accept that?
Well, that is that is very tricky, because the military has become, really politicized, especially after in the events leading to the removal of Robert Mugabe. I mean, there was always the perception in Zimbabwe that the military was politicized, and I believe that perception to be true. But the events that took place recently sort of confirmed that they have a stake in the political situation in Zimbabwe. And I do not think, after having removed Mugabe and installed Emerson Mnangagwa as president, that they will easily let go. So in that respect, I think it's going to be really tricky if the opposition was to win that election for the military to let go. Because now they've got a stake, and a visible stake in it. They've got some of their colleagues in cabinet at the moment.
And some of the generals who were in the military.
Yes. We've got Parent Shiri and Sibusiso
And I was reading on Twitter, the opposition were complaining that Parents Shiri wants to use his voice to intimidate people in the parliament. Oh, do you think it's true?
Well, look,
it might be true.
Look, Parents Shiri has got a reputation, and look, it's. I wouldn't say that such a view by the opposition would be far-fetched. It could be true. He might have been placed there strategically.
Okay.
Who knows?
I know.
Who knows?
It's politics. It's a dedication.
It is.
Look, on a more serious issue in Africa, we have had problems in Libya and said situation that at this like this year, like 2017, you wouldn't expect to see things like slave trade.
Look, the situation in Libya is
What's
it is
going
very
on in
it is
Goma,
very
Joseph? Yeah.
sad. It is depressing, and what makes it even more confronting is that this is happening on the continent of Africa. What we are seeing, Africans, ill-treating other Africans, selling other Africans as slaves. And in the 21st century, you wouldn't really expect such a thing to be happening.
That's unbelievable.
But you and me know that it is happening.
Yes.
And that is one thing that, Africa has got to deal with. And sadly, it's not only an African problem at the moment, because if you look at the problem of immigration, for example, these people from countries like Nigeria, Ivory Coast, even countries in the Horn of Africa as well, Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, where
They've
there's a
been
lot of
migrating
conflict.
too.
They have been migrating to Libya in large numbers in the hope of crossing the Mediterranean to go to Europe.
Yeah, I heard it's easier from Libya.
It's easier because that's the shortest distance between Africa and Europe. So what's been happening, perhaps to give just a historical perspective to this.
Yes.
Immigration to Libya is not a new thing. It has always been happening, even when Gaddafi was still the leader of Libya. But the problems that we are seeing now were perhaps not as visible as they are now, because there was law and order in Libya at the time
when Gaddafi
was the leader. So now what we are seeing is there is a lot of chaos in Libya. There's a central government there, but it's not actually in control of the country. In fact, actually, there's 3 separate governments there in Libya. There is the internationally recognized government, which is based in Tripoli, and there is a very conservative Islamic government, also based in Tripoli, and then there is an anti-government. An anti-Islamic government, which is based in the east of the country. So all these 3 players have got militias on the ground who support them. They control separate territories.
All right.
Yes. And what you see, some of the chaos is because of this issue, that there is no central government there, which has got the authority and control in the country to enforce law and order.
Someone must have had the idea in Libya, who would have said, no, look, we can sell these people.
Well, look, I was coming to that issue. So what happens when people leave their home countries in the hope of getting a breakthrough and making it across the Mediterranean to Italy, which is the gateway to Europe?
Yes,
obviously. So people along the way, they first usually come into contact with people smugglers. These are people who help them cross the borders and avoid detection, across the borders. And once they arrive, they pay these people to help them cross the international borders while making their way to Libya.
All right.
Once they arrive in Libya, obviously they have to stay underground, because essentially they are illegal immigrants, they've crossed the borders illegally. This is where they come into the hands of the local militia who run detention centers. So these people find their way into detention centers where they are held while waiting for a boat to to cross the Mediterranean to Libya.
That's when,
and this is where most of their problems start, because once they arrive in Libya, the people smugglers usually start demanding more money from these same people.
Yes.
And they haven't got any source of money. Remember, these are people in transit.
Yes, yes.
And they probably paid any money that they had to the people smugglers. So once they get there, they say the people smugglers start demanding money from them. This is where they start to get exploited, because they have to pay back to the people smugglers when they haven't got money. And this is where the issue of slavery starts. So once they get there, they get into detention centers. The people smugglers, together with the militias who run these detention centers, they start exploiting these people now, extorting money from them. And sometimes people are actually beaten up while they are on the phone to their relative back home, so that the relatives back home
would send
money.
Because I was going to ask you, some of them, they say it's all for organ donation and stuff like that. So some of them are killed. And some, why this inhumane treatment to another human being?
Well, I wouldn't rule the issue of organ, people being killed for their organs. Yes, exactly. In a situation, in a lawless, country like Libya, anything is possible. What we witnessed recently, people being sold for as little as $400.
Yes.
I mean, it's really pathetic. And if someone can do that to a human being, what makes you think that they will not kill that person for their organs? They might as well just kill that person, get their organs, and then they won't have the burden of looking after that person. Yes. And this is why the situation in Libya is getting really desperate, because these people, remember, these are people who have already witnessed a lot of violence from where they come from. These are people from very poor backgrounds, and these are people who have been persecuted politically, religiously, and socially, and this is why they are fleeing their countries in the first place. And to come and place themselves in that situation where you could possibly get killed for your organs, I mean, it's really sad.
It is sad. Why is it that the international community, including the African Union, the EU, were so slow to react? Even now, they're not doing much. Why is it that such an inhumane thing is happening? Even United Nations, they are dragging their feet. Is it because it's Africa?
Well, look, there are many issues there. First of all, the issue of people being sold as slaves. I think it came out not too long ago through a documentary by CNN. I think there have been rumors that this was happening in Libya, but I think there wasn't actually confirmed. Concrete evidence to say this is actually what is happening. But to answer your question as to why nothing has been done up to now, one of the problems is that we've got people here, I mean the victims of this practice, who are themselves illegal immigrants in the country where they are being ill-treated. So these people are very reluctant to report these issues to the authorities, because obviously if you report, you're exposing yourself. That is one of the issues there. And the other issue, as I pointed out, the fact that there is no central government in Libya which has got the authority to enforce the law in Libya. So every one of the three governments that I mentioned before have got their own militias who are running things on the ground for them. They control the streets, these people. So it's very hard for, say, someone from outside to come and say, we need to solve this issue, when the Libyans themselves cannot even talk to each other. They cannot. Well, they don't even know who is in control. That is one of the main issues.
Is it all because Gaddafi was removed?
Well, you can trace some of these problems to the fact that Gaddafi was removed. But as I said earlier, people have always been moving to Libya. Since even when Gaddafi was the leader of Libya, there is, according to the International Organization for Migration, there were, during Gaddafi's time, there were up to 1 million people from other African countries who were working in Libya at that time. But the difference was that at that time, the Libyan economy was very strong. So people could actually work in Libya without this exploitation that we are saying. Maybe there was exploitation, but it was,
like
maybe minimal.
Yeah.
Yes. But because now there is chaos in there, and the economy in Libya now is basically, non-existent. Well, the economy is there, but it's very fractured at the moment. So people are resorting to extreme measures to earn a living. And those people who are in Libya already are now perhaps finding themselves without jobs, without anywhere to go.
So you get angry at these people who are coming in as well.
Exactly. And then you have a situation where people obviously keep coming to Libya in the hope of going, crossing the Mediterranean to Europe. Whereas previously people came to Libya to work,
all right,
not necessarily to cross.
Okay.
But now you see people coming to find work in the hope of finding work, but mostly people are hoping to cross the channel to Europe.
All right.
Yes. And the Europeans obviously are shutting their borders.
Yes, they are, because there are heaps of immigrants going into Europe. So what do you think the international community should do, or organizations such as African Union, United Nations, and others, European Union? What do you think they should, what action should they take?
Well, by starting with the African Union, because I think it's always good to start at home.
Yes.
As I said before, most of the problems that force people to go to Libya in the hope of finding their way to Europe, they start in the country of origin. There is a lot of conflict in Africa, war in Africa. The economies of most countries are not able to sustain their own population. They are not able to generate employment for all the people. This is why we see people taking all these desperate measures to go to Libya, and ultimately finding themselves in situations where they are being sold as slaves. So the African Union needs to ensure that, to start with, there is a comprehensive strategy to resolve conflict in Africa.
Okay.
Because this is the source for most of this migration that is happening there. People are fleeing political persecution and conflict, civil wars in the Great Lakes region, in the Horn of Africa. At the moment, there is incessant war in Somalia. We've got Al Shabaab, and then in Nigeria, we've got Boko Haram. And just what the African Union is doing to address those issues, one wonders. And these are the sources of most of these problems. And secondly, the era of African leaders ignoring problems in neighboring countries should actually end.
Just like, it's your problem.
Yes, it's your problem. We don't interfere in another country's internal affairs. Well, if that position is resulting in thousands, if not millions, of people trekking on that treacherous journey to Libya, and most people die, by the way, on the way to Libya, because they have to cross the desert to get to Libya, and women particularly get raped along the way.
I heard that.
So there is a lot of things that go on there. So what I'm saying is, to the African Union, this should actually be a wake-up call that we can't let our people do this. Suffer such humiliation, and the fact that we are seeing Europe actually taking the lead in terms of addressing this issue. It should be a source of embarrassment to our leaders
in Africa. So what about UN? Should they send a military, or probably they have sent a military there to sort of like control what's going to happen, what's going on there?
Well, in terms of the United Nations,
or it should just be diplomatic stuff.
I think what's needed in Libya really is not more soldiers, because I think there's already a lot of guns in Libya. What is needed there is a political solution, some kind of international mediation there. As I said, there are several factions there, each one with its own government, obviously that is not sustainable. You need one central government which has the authority to enforce law and order in the country. So I think for the United Nations, they need to, you know, enhance their diplomatic efforts in Libya to ensure that law and order prevails, first of all. Because anything else, any kind of intervention that is going to happen in Libya is going to be very difficult.
And it's going to be temporary.
And without a central government there, with all these militias running around with guns on the streets, I mean, honestly, what kind of intervention is going to take place there? And which country is going to send its own
sacrifice its
own soldiers in such a volatile situation? So I think for the United Nations, that's what they need to do as as a priority issue in Africa.
Well,
I mean, in Libya.
In Libya. Well, Mgomajiz, I want to thank you for that view. Look, the citizenship issue in Australian government is still affecting the political parties, even the government.
Yeah, I mean, don't you
100%.
Don't you just love Australian politics?
Man.
Yes, look, the citizenship crisis, I'll call it a crisis.
Yeah, it is a crisis.
Because I think that's what it is.
It's affecting everything.
It has affected everyone. Look, it makes you wonder, first of all, just who is Australian. I mean, it appears that everybody out there has got some entitlement to some kind of citizenship somewhere.
Yes, that's true.
And so that makes us all equal Australians, I guess.
That's what you want to go at.
Because it appears everybody came from somewhere.
So what do you think?
I think this is an issue that both sides of the political divide in Australia just needs to get their hands on and deal with it. I think they just need to stop playing politics with this issue.
All right.
To start with, obviously, it was a Malcolm Turnbull issue because yes, and Labour,
they were just burning.
Yeah, they were exploiting the situation to the maximum, hoping that as many Liberal members of Parliament and senators would fall victim to this citizenship crisis, but recently it is actually turned around. It seems Labour has got some skeletons in their own. In their own closet as well. My understanding at the moment is that there are actually several Labour MPs and senators who have actually fallen victim to this citizenship crisis.
You say?
Yes. And now, the question is, do they refer themselves to the High Court or not? But, I mean, at the end of the day, a decision is going to be made, and I suspect that we are going to see more people coming out of the closet on this issue.
Because Bill Shorten was like sitting down on everything, and he said they had done the right thing. We know Bill Shorten. He has lied to us before. And look, the unfortunate thing about this politics in Australia, he is the next option for being Australian Prime Minister. Would you trust Bill Shorten?
Well, look, based on what he assured the Australian people on this citizenship crisis, I would say there are some question marks about, whether he's
a trusted person.
Yeah, someone that you can trust in terms of what he says.
You still remember the weekend penalties and stuff like that? He backflipped on it. He said, look, we're going to support the independent empire. To go through it. If they said, look, we don't need Sunday penalties, we're going to support it. But when the independent empire came through, he backflipped. He started saying, no, we can't support that.
Yeah, but look, the thing is, though, Bill Shorten has backflipped on many issues. So even on this the recent same-sex marriage bill, just a few months ago, I watched him actually giving a speech in Parliament yesterday after the bill was passed, and while he tried his hardest not to take credit for it, but he certainly shared in the glory of that bill being passed.
Victors. Bill Shorten, Michael Chitambo, which one would you go for?
Well, look, I would, as preferred Prime Minister,
Yes.
I would go for Malcolm Turnbull.
All right.
Yes. I haven't got anything against the Labour Bill Shorten personally, although I think as Prime Minister generally, he lacks the appeal perhaps that Malcolm, Turnbull has, the charisma that Malcolm Turnbull has. But the main issue that I have is with the Labour Party in itself, not with Bill Shorten as the leader. The Labour Party it has got many issues that they've tried to sweep under the carpet. They have been associated with with the unions, for example. I've nothing against the unions, by the way. I'm a member of a union myself, but I think some of the activities that have taken place between the Labour Party and the unions actually border on the, if I should use that word, on the criminal sometimes. Yeah. And that makes them, intrinsically untrustworthy, in my view.
All right. Anyway, let's continue with our discussion. This must be the last one. I can see you're getting a little bit tired for a man who works so hard during the week. I'm just joking. Go ahead, Jose. Look, the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital city of Israel.
Oh, don't you just laugh?
That's a very conflicting issue.
And yes, that's a very, very controversial issue. Look, successive American presidents have always treaded very careful on this issue because it is one of the major sources of conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis. They both claim Jerusalem as their capital. The Palestinians obviously say Jerusalem was taken away from them by the Israelis. The Israelis say they've always had an attachment to Jerusalem dating back thousands of years. So the Americans have always, as I said, treaded very carefully. They have always avoided recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital city. And the main reason for that is that they wanted to promote dialogue between these two sides. Because recognizing Jerusalem as the capital city of Israel, it automatically, gives Israel the advantage in the ongoing negotiations, because you have actually confirmed that Jerusalem belongs to the Israelis. And I think by doing that, President Trump has lost, the initiative and the position to be able to influence these negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians.
It's been going on for years.
It has been going on for years and years. Yeah. And I think it was like what President Trump did actually was, throw fuel into a fire. And, it was a manageable fire, but by throwing fuel in it, it actually makes the conversation, discussions there very, very complex.
Man, I hope there won't be any more of because it causes a lot of war in that region.
Oh yeah,
and it has been there the wars has been around for a couple of years. I heard it is because of the Israelites who moved to a certain land where explain that.
Yes, look, well, for those who might not
understand what's going on there,
Israel was established as a state after World War II, I believe in 1948. So the Jewish people obviously were being persecuted across, especially in Europe.
Yes.
Particularly under the Nazis. So one of the things that was agreed at the end of World War II, through obviously ongoing negotiations, was that the Jewish people deserved a state of their own, and that's when they were settled in present-day Israel. But prior to that, obviously, the Arabs, the Palestinians, they occupied that land, and obviously they saw it as their own, land that they'd occupied.
They never accepted the resettlement of
they've never accepted, and they've never recognized Israel.
So who resettled them there?
Well, this was an Look, it was a very complex agreement. That was, you might have heard about the something called the Balfour Declaration.
Yes.
This one, many countries were involved. Britain was complicit in this arrangement as well. So what they did was to agree that the Israelis could settle in present day Israel, and Britain was going to guarantee, I believe, security for the Palestinians. And obviously, somewhere along the line, everybody reneged on their promises.
All right.
This is why we have this conflict at the moment.
Okay.
Yes. And the Palestinians, from that time, they've never accepted or recognized Israel as a state. And obviously, Israel, on their part, in these negotiations that are going on, part of their demands is that Palestine recognizes them as a state, which obviously, and it has drawn other players in the region as well.
All right.
Players like Iran, for example. Iran doesn't recognize Israel.
Okay.
And previously, Egypt as well didn't, Israel went to war with Egypt. You might have heard of the 6-day war.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Where, Israel won in 6 days, hence the 6-day war. There were, I believe there were several actually conflicts, wars that were fought between Israel and Egypt. Yes, in the 60s, 70s. And all that was because most of these countries, they did not want a Jewish state amongst their midst.
Oh, I see.
Yes. And this is why this conflict is still there.
So what do you think should be done?
Well, I believe, look, I believe that diplomatic solution is the only way to go on this issue. I do not, we've seen a lot of fighting recently. I believe the last conflict was about two or so years ago between Israel and the Palestinians.
Yeah.
I think the only way to go is negotiating. Having said that, though, we know that negotiations have been ongoing for many years.
And Jerusalem has already been recognized as the capital.
And that just throws the spanners in the works.
All right.
It takes the progress that has been made so far, it just takes it back many years. Because now, obviously, the Palestinians will be, making new demands. And Israel, having had Jerusalem recognized as the capital by none other than the United States of America, which it has historically been their main protector. So that actually embodies, it gives them, strategically it places them in a more, advantageous position going forward in these negotiations. Yes.
All right. Gomajo, we want to thank you. Next week, I know you'll be here and we on your show, or I won't be around. So obviously, people will see me around with my own show around there behind the desk as a DJ as usual for interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah. So as I said, next week we have a program talking politics with me. And we'll be touching on different issues, as I said, in Zimbabwe, around the world, here in Australia, in America, in the United Kingdom. And if you've got any interesting ideas out there, or if you have any issues that you want us to talk about, please feel free to let us know. Yes. And we will make sure that we incorporate perhaps not every idea, but most ideas that you bring to our attention.
And I'm sure we'll have some of these shows live Facebook so that we can answer questions as we go.
Yes. We want to make, as well. Yes, we want to make this program, reach as wide an audience as possible. So we've got plans to stream live on Facebook, answering people's questions. And inviting ideas from people. So yes, everything is in the pipeline. We've got interesting things coming our way.
Very much. Thank you, Mkoma Jesse.
Thank you very much.
You are watching Mutapa TV with your boy DJ Ron on the Castle Gladiator. Mkoma Jose is here, and he has been explaining to us what's going on around the world. Talk about it next week.
Thank you very much. 6 next time.